Hey guys, Everett from 40 and 20 here. I got a watch review for you guys today, and this is going to be a review of the Orion Hellcat. This is a video review. I don't know if it's appropriate for us to call them reviews at this point. More just sort of a video showing you a watch that we got sent in for review. Typically, what we do is we get these watches in, we wear them for a week, and then we have folks on the podcast. But we've decided to sort of incorporate video reviews when we can, and I didn't want to pass up the opportunity to do this one. So, so I've got the Orion Hellcat. You guys, this watch, I think, is one of my very favorite watches that we've ever had in for review. And you know, we've had some winners in for review. I really like a dive watch, and this is not a dive watch. Certainly not a dive watch. But what it is a field watch, or perhaps a pilot watch from Orion. And uh, those of you who have been in the world for a while will have heard of Orion, certainly have seen some of their watches. If you don't have any personal experience with one, I'm going to recommend that you stop what you're doing now and figure out a way to get hands on, because I think that Nick Harris from Orion is doing something really, really special with his watches. So Orion is got kind of a fun history. Nick Harris started off as a watch modder, as you know, a guy who would take watches and make modifications and sell them for profit, for his own income on the time he spent on those watches. And he was doing that to put himself through watch school, which that in and of itself I think is a fun part of this story. But it really, that is not enough of a description of what he was doing. You know, where I think we see many watch modders, and whether that's Yaboki's or Jake from Dagaz, or whoever, I think we see a lot of the same sort of systems. You know, folks that are taking watches that are beloved and comfortable and a good value, and making dial modifications or hand modifications. You know, Nick's done something different here with his mods. Nick, whether he was making, you know, Mokume Gane bezels or dials, or you know, doing really, really incredible hand engraving to Seiko cases or to his own cases. I think that what he was doing was a step above, maybe different, but just a different level of modification. I think that it's fair to say that we see that different level of attention come through in Orion watches, which is the evolution of watches by Nick into a watch brand. Uh, Orion, I think, started off well. So really, the stepping off point for Orion as a watch brand was with the Field Standard watch. And I believe that the Field Standard watch started off as a sort of one-off small run watch for a website called Go and Behold, which I don't have any personal experience with. But I think what happened is the demand for these things was so high and so crazy that it naturally turned into a standard run watch just by way of the demand for this thing. And the Field Standard watch, very cool watch. I don't have any personal experience, but I think that the evolution of that was towards the Orion One, which is quote unquote Orion's first watch, and then the fantastic dive watch, the Calamity, which we haven't got hands on, but I'm certainly going to try to after seeing that, or after seeing this piece, which is the third or perhaps the fourth Orion watch, the Hellcat. You guys, just take a moment. Just take a moment and look at how beautiful this watch is. Because this is not a run of the mill micro brand watch. Uh, this thing is really something different and special. The biggest thing I see when we make the jump from entry level micro brand watches to this next tier, this maybe $600 to $1,000 tier, is finishing. the finishing on this thing, you guys, is just totally crazy. And I don't know enough about watch finishing to be able to tell you what the differences are, um, how the differences are achieved. But what I can tell you is that in person, if it's not showing up on video, the brushing on this thing is totally out of this world, as is the polished surfaces and the transition between. It's I think it's easy to do, or I suspect it's relatively easy to do good brushing. I suspect it's relatively easy to do good polishing. What we don't see at watches in the $400, $500 range is transitions like this. This watch has a bevel, a chamfer, perhaps, that navigates both sides, obviously. And the transition from the brush to the polished surfaces is totally stunning. So, the Hellcat, what is it? I would say this is a pilot's watch, perhaps a field watch. You've got a crosshair. You've got just a 12-hour, no 24-hour indication, but a 12-hour indication. The font on this thing, I understand, is a custom font that Nick created or had created. You've got this alternating solid and dashed minute track. It's not I wouldn't call it a simple dial, but it winds up being relatively unobtrusive, and legibility is out of this world. Syringe hands, a tasteful date window that creates symmetry with the rest of the dial. Good north-south symmetry with the logo and the Hellcat automatic. And I believe this is pad printed, but all of the edges are just totally perfect. So, what are the specs? 39mm case, which right up my alley. 10.5mm thick. And you guys, I cannot tell you how nice the thickness on this thing is, because it's out of this world. 47mm up and down. So many Orion watches have very long lugs. I think Nick's a sucker for a long lug. I'm perhaps not, which I think makes this Hellcat particularly appealing to me. These lugs are perfect length. Totally perfect length. Sapphire, crystal, obviously at this level I think we expect that. But a very nice flat sapphire crystal. 100 millimeters of water resistance, 100 meters of water resistance. So no issue wearing this in the water. Screw down crown. Miyota 9015. If you listen to the podcast, we're big fans of a Miyota 9015. It allows makers to achieve this very thin profile with significant water resistance still. And the crowning achievement of this guy, I think, is the case back. And I've got a polish on here. This is a polished case back with the Orion constellation. And so it's a fingerprint magnet. If you're holding it, it's a little. I just cleaned this thing, and already you can see that it's smudgy, which is what it is. But it's a screwed down case back, as opposed to a screw down case back. But I think I'm going to be able to capture this thing. It's curved, you guys, just like the Calamity. The case back on this thing is curved, which means that on the wrist, this thing wears incredibly comfortably. It's really hard to get this angle on video. I'll figure out a solution for that someday. You guys, insane how comfortable this thing is to wear. I'll just say it's the most comfortable watch I've ever worn. The most comfortable watch I've ever worn. The case, outrageously thin. 10.5 millimeters. You can't see this. I mean, there's no way for me to demonstrate how thin it is. I guess I can compare it to another watch. Crazy thin. And the finishing. Something special with the finishing. It's like nothing else I've ever seen. Another detail that may be hard to see is just like the case back. This bezel, this polished bezel, which is beautiful, is concave. It's concave. It's something that might not be super apparent in pictures, but as soon as you pick it up, you can see it the way in person that the light plays with the bezel. it's very obvious in person, and it's a really, really neat detail. I've never seen it on another watch. I don't know if that's a one-off, if Nick's the first to do that. I suspect not, but it's not something you see very often, and I really like it. What else to say? Oh, I'd be making a huge mistake if I didn't talk about this strap, because again, if you listen to the podcast, I'm in particular a sucker for a bracelet, and I'm a little sad that there's no bracelet that comes OEM on this thing. However, if you're gonna have a leather bracelet or a leather strap, it should be this one. Super comfortable. This is leagues ahead of most of the OEM straps. Supple, comfortable. I suspect this thing is soft and wearable out of the box. We got this in as a press model, uh, but you guys, this is this buckle next level. Same finishing on the buckle. Tang is solid and delicious. Fantastic. I think I'm going to wrap there. We're at about 11 minutes. That's long for a YouTube video. Uh, knurled crown, which I think is a staple of Orion, and I really like it. That's it. I don't have a lot else to say about this thing, so I'm going to let it go from there. Thanks for joining us, and check us out next time.